Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Barb Cardell. I am the training director with the U.S. Positive Women's Network, and I am here to open up our webinar this afternoon for social media and advocacy, which will be facilitated by Tiami Luckett. Just wanted to get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way first before we get started. This webinar is being recorded. You will be able to see both the slides and the webinar recording on the PWN USA website. So you can find it there probably in a day or two. We have both the question and answer box open. So if you have a question that you would like to have Tiami answer, you can go ahead and put that in there. If I can answer it, I'll go ahead and do so so that she can continue with the flow of the webinar. We are going to have some question and answer parts of our webinar where you can share a little bit about your personal experience around social media, or maybe ask for a little bit of support or have some questions answered. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a little bit of a bar, and it has both the chat box, it has raise your hand, and it has question and answers. So I'm going to be helping and monitoring all of those. But certainly, if you would like to come off of mute and ask a question or share a personal story, when we get to that point, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll go ahead and take you off of mute. Otherwise, we'll just be monitoring chat box for people to sign on and say hello. And if you have a question that you want to make sure gets answered, put it in the Q&A. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Tiami to take us into some deep learning around social media and effective advocacy.
Thank you so much, Barb. Again, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us on this, what I think to be a very important webinar, knowing that social media is how we get a lot of our information out there. And more often than not, those of us who are involved in the HIV movement are using social media for our advocacy. Again, my name is Tiami Luckett. I am the Block Project Coordinator. It's a partnership with NMAC, Thrive SS, TLC, Transgender Law Center, PWN, and the USPL HIV Caucus. And I am the lead trainer for both PWN and the caucus. Next slide, please. So the goals and objectives of this webinar: one, we hope to get you to understand how social media can support your advocacy. Two, learn to manage your online presence. Three, gain skills to resolve conflicts online. And four, assess your virtual communication style. Next slide, please. A little bit about PWN. Positive Women's Network USA is a national membership body of women living with HIV and our allies that exists to strengthen the strategic power of all women living with HIV in the United States. Founded in 2008 by 28 diverse women leaders living with HIV, PWN develops a leadership pipeline and policy agenda that applies a gender lens to the domestic HIV epidemic, grounded in social justice and human rights. Next slide, please. All right, and we are. See the photo of the current USPL HIV caucus. The caucus also, well, the USPL HIV caucus, also known as the HIV caucus or simply the caucus, is comprised of organizations, coalitions, networks, or client groups of people living with HIV, institutions, and independent advocates living with HIV. The HIV caucus collectively speaks with a unified voice for people living with HIV in the US. And at present, the caucus is an unincorporated association of interested parties and does not have a corporate nonprofit status. Next slide. As I previously mentioned, PWN as well as the caucus are both partners on this collaborative agreement with NMAC under the, and it was called Block, Building Leaders of Color, right? And so here I brought up the logos of all of the original partners in the cooperative agreement. Thrive SS stands for Transforming HIV Resentments into Victories, Everlasting Support Services. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk, we just want to get into how we can actually use social media to move our advocacy efforts forward, right? Next slide. But why do we even need social media for advocacy? Sometimes social media allows us to take a break, and we can reach out over social media and express how we are having a good or a bad day and in need of uplifting thoughts or cute cat videos, right? So social media gives us the opportunity to build trust and relationships with people that we ordinarily wouldn't be around. It breaks down isolation and gives people a spirit of connectedness. So we use social media because we don't want to feel alone in the world, that we're a part of something bigger. And we can also use it to validate our social self, right? So we use content that supports our values, our beliefs, and shares information often faster than traditional means. We can minimize geographic barriers, as I stated before. People get that sense of connectedness, right? Things that are happening in other parts of the country that don't necessarily affect us, but we want people to know what is going on. We can minimize that barrier in, as far as geography, because we can actually be right there in the thick of it. And lastly, we use it to create and share events, as well as updating participants and collecting RSVPs, right? And Facebook is a great way to share an event or an upcoming event that you guys are actually participating in. And there's a question in the chat box. Feel free to answer, and at any moment, Barb, you can stop me once those responses come in. Next slide, please. All right. So why do we use social media at all, right? As I stated, we do it to build trust and relationships. So let's just say if you look up someone that you're about to have a meeting with, right, but you've never met them, you can go to social media, check out what they're posting. In the event that they're actually posting stuff that is just angry in content, then you go into that meeting guarded. But on the flip side, if you see someone posting videos or photos of vacation spots that they've been and you yourself have been there, then your guard is going to be lowered, and you can actually start off with the proper dialogue, right? Because you're not so guarded going into that meeting. We also use it to present supporting or alternative perspectives. And this is a way to talk about something that is current in pop culture. You can present your alternative viewpoint online in real time. And you can listen in and see what people who are listening are saying. And let's just say, okay, I had a conversation about the Emmys, right? And if you watch Pose, there's a character on there named Pray Tell, right? Billy Porter. And what he does is, what the conversation was about was whether he actually deserved the Emmy nomination for Best Supporting Actor. A lot of people felt like one of the trans women who were featured in the show deserved the nomination, and other people justified that they were valid in giving him the nomination, right? But that's just an example of how people can either support or give an alternate perspective on a single thing that's happening in pop culture, in current culture, right? You can share your information, you can share your views or information quickly. And as I said, you can do it in real time, somewhat real time. You don't have to wait for, a letter to the editor or an op-ed, right? Where by the time it is actually published, people have moved on to a different topic. So it gives you that opportunity to speak about an issue in real time. You can amplify the response to information. So say, for instance, you know that something is happening in a part of the country, right? But you know that it's not right. And you know that it affects a lot of people disproportionately than another set of the population. If you want to amplify the response, take to social media. You will let people know what is happening, and other people can get involved and thereby hold whatever the situation is accountable, or whatever person accountable, as well as mobilize people to take action or attend an event. PWN is very well known for doing this. We actually use social media as well as our newsletters to get information out about things that are happening as far as policy regarding women and trans people living with HIV, right? Next slide. As I stated, social media is used because it makes people feel like they're not alone and that they're a part of something bigger. How does it do that? By giving introverts the opportunity to contribute to whatever the subject matter is, right? It promotes a sense of connectedness to the cause for people who are not likely or not able to actually engage or mobilize, breaking down isolation. And the second point, what I'm talking about when I say the safety net, you can share information when you can't physically mobilize and you still have the opportunity for engagement, right? Still be able to share your viewpoints, your opinions, and get it amplified out there in the real world. Amplifying messages of protest. If people are isolated and not able to mobilize, then social media gives them the opportunity to respond to social injustices that may have come across their news feeds, right? You can actually respond to those injustices, because if you see something happening around you and you can't respond in your normal setting, simply because you know, of your setting, you could be around family who either agree with what was posted that you disagree with, or you can be at work and you shouldn't be talking about it, you know, but you can always go back to that post and amplify the message of protest, right? We witness injustices and we record social injustices. Facebook Live is an excellent way to actually witness and record social injustices, right? It gives people the chance to record live videos to shine a light on injustices. I remember one of my friends that I met in Nashville through song, Southerners on New Ground, right? Very, very vocal about police brutality and all of these other things, right? So when he himself was arrested during a protest, he stayed live the whole time. So we were aware of what his treatment was like. We were able to understand like what he was going through, how he was feeling in that moment. And believe it or not, because he was on social media when he was arrested, people were able to get the message out there quickly and get him released, right? Just for simply standing up to injustices, right? We're not saying that the legal system is perfect, not by any means. And more often than not, subgroups are targeted. But through the use of social media, we can highlight those instances of injustice. Just know that social media is always available. And what I mean by that is that it's not bound by time. The information is readily available as needed. And as busy people, sometimes our engagement on social media or advocacy has to fit around our commitments, right? Next slide. As I was saying, we use social media to validate our social self, right? And how do we do that? People engage with content on social media that they think makes them look smart, funny, inspirational, or making a difference. So basically what people post and what they choose to react to, comment on, and share is a reflection of how they want people to see them. So it's important to think about when choosing what content to post and what commentary to put on it, because people are far more likely to engage with your content, which is what gets people into your news feeds. And if they feel they're doing so will make them look smart, funny, inspirational, or making a difference, then they're more likely to share your material. So if in essence, effective posts will reflect your beliefs and your values, right? Effective posts highlight injustices. We discussed that on the previous slide. Not only do we do that, but we also celebrate victories, right? We celebrate victories, and I've been on social media on my news feed, and I've known of announcements of engagements. I've witnessed wedding photos. I've witnessed new children being born. I've witnessed new fur babies being adopted, right? All of these things, you know, that just it adds to the celebration of life, right? And not to say that we have to bog down our social media feeds with only injustices. We need to celebrate those victories as well. We also can use social media to share our public persona. And whether you know it or not, you do have an online persona, right? And so as an example, I have a friend, an advocate friend, who is really angry at the state of the world and is always yelling on social media. So to get away from that and show her silly side, what she did was she recorded a 2-second video of her singing along to Baby Shark. So that added dimensions to who she is as like an online persona, as an online personality, right? Because people actually laughed, they commented, they shared, they loved the video, right? And it was so different than what they were used to coming from this person. Next slide. We use social media to invite folks in. Here is where I said Facebook is great for this. So you can easily create events on your Facebook page and invite your Facebook friends, who in turn invite their Facebook friends, right? And so on. It goes on and on. It's great for sharing announcements of webinars where vital information needs to be shared to the public. It can be used to create virtual meeting spaces for people to collaborate and share information. And it can also be used to announce opportunities for mobilization and organizing as a rapid response. And I've seen this play out on social media through Instagram as well as Snapchat. Next slide, please. I want everyone to think about who Facebook would say that they are right now. And here's a lovely little word cloud, right? There is an algorithm that is used on Facebook to tell people who they think that you are, right? And so here we have a lot of lovely adjectives, some of them not so getting us in a good light, right? But honestly, if you were honest with yourself, and I want you to put it in the chat, who would Facebook say that you are? And I'll give you a minute. All right, I got one response. Facebook says Jenny is fierce. AF. Cranky, inspiring, fun, loving of all, and an awesome advocate. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Next slide. And I did all that to say that you do have an online persona, right? But how do you present yourself on social media? That's the question. And Miss Sarah added quiet and friendly. Thank you so much. And I would agree. I would agree. You are very friendly. But how do you present yourself on social media, right? Are you inspirational, motivational, judgmental, condescending? Are you open to questions and discussion? So basically the question is, how do you present yourself to the world? And who do you want the world to see, right? Through your posts. So when I've had conflict with other people, I noticed that sometimes my feelings were evoked, especially when it came to like issues around the trans community, right? And so what I also came to realize was that a lot of people, they live for a good blow up, right? They live for a good social media blow up. So I had to take a step back. Right? And be like, what am I presenting to the world? Because in person, I was different to these same people who had read some of my posts. But I guess the big question that I want to leave you guys with is, however people see you on social media, is that your intent or is it by accident? And does it actually serve the work that you do, or does it make it harder? Just something to think about. Next slide, please. Here we find an example of someone that I thought has an excellent online persona, right? And I don't know if many of you know her, but Chrissy Teigen is very intentional in her social media posting on Twitter. A lot of people call her the Twitter queen, right? And although she is married to John Legend, a very famous music artist, she is more than just his wife, and she does that on purpose. So she talks about being a mother, and also she has like a line of plates and serving pieces in Target. She's an author of a cookbook and currently a judge on Bring on the Funny. And so I have a few examples of some of her posting on social media. That's the top two. And what she's referring to in the top left corner is actually the poisonous plastic wrapping that these little White Castle sandwiches come in that are in the grocery store. She's not saying, you know, that she eats healthy and all of this, but what she is saying is that because you have to cook the sandwiches in the microwave inside the plastic bag to actually cook it right, you're also hurting yourself because that plastic wrapping is poisonous, right? So she's very opinionated, unapologetically opinionated, and so much so that if you look at the bottom slide, the bottom graphic, that's someone waiting for her opinion. Like people live for what she has to say, right? And not to say that she's the end all be all, but she is aware of what her online persona is. And so she uses that to her advantage. Next slide, please. Think about how you agree or disagree with people online. But sometimes disagreements are necessary and important to provide pushback on people's unsupported or wildly speculative points of view. We want to deal in facts, not belief. But do they go together or are they separate? The goal is not to get involved in name calling or derogatory terms as a means of being hurtful, right? So think about what you share, react, and comment to. Do you uphold your beliefs only when you comment on something or when you're posting something? Do you condemn others who don't agree with you? Do you choose not to engage in opposing views? And if so, why? Why? Do you engage in verbal fights and harassment? I have. It's not to say that none of us have, but I have. Do others expect reactions from you and share or tag you in posts contrary to your beliefs and values? And you need to be careful or be aware that this is a real thing, right? I remember being tagged in something that just turned into this whole other thing. It went across different social media. It went from Facebook to Twitter to YouTube, all because we chose to not agree. And that agreement turned into a verbal fight. So just be careful. Just be careful. Next slide, please. Go back one for me. This is a real question that I'm presenting to the audience. What is the worst meltdown you've seen on social media? And as you're thinking about it and putting it into the chat box, I'll explain what it is that you're looking at. This is an example of one that I thought was particularly bad. And these are just screenshots of Kanye West's Twitter feed, right? And all of us know that he is fairly conservative. And he got into this battle because of it, right? On Twitter. Honestly, he just kind of lost it. So sometimes you have to realize that you're going down a rabbit hole. And when you do see that, just put the phone down, step away, go for a walk. You can turn off social media. You do realize that you can log out, right? And just enjoy nature if possible. But this on the right, you see how many times Kanye tweeted back to back? Y'all, that went on for like hours. It went on for hours. And that's just one example of what I think is like the worst meltdown I've ever seen. And Barb, do we have anything in the chat?
I am checking. It doesn't seem like we do. So if there are people who would like, we've got from Deirdre, we've got the black Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would like to come off of mute, Deirdre, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll take you off of mute. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, please. Please, we want this to be interactive.
All right, Deirdre, you can go ahead and we can hear you.
Hello, ladies.
Hi, Deidre.
This is awesome. Thank you guys so much for putting this on. The deal with the whole Ariel for Little Mermaid being a different color and all of that, that was like the craziest social media for that fiasco recently that I know I've come across. And it, yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted. That's all that, and anything regarding Trump and agreeing or disagreeing with him is also another a rabbit hole. Try to be careful of how you respond.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know I've personally had one kind of blow up on my personal, and it was in reference to Nushan Williams and where some advocates, like you said earlier, Tiami, about, you know, name calling and that kind of thing. And the unfortunate piece is that I didn't catch it because I was actually busy doing a presentation, and it came back later and I had to go back and figure it all out. And, you know, it looked bad on my page. And then of course, trying to support someone that already has a bad rap, you know, it just made the advocates look bad, and it also made the situation look bad. So, yeah, those are the three issues that I would, you know, bring to light.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I just know that social media went crazy. And I had no clue that it was actually about Ariel being a Black character, right? So I just saw all of these memes popping up where all of these other characters had they were either turned into Black people, and I just had no clue what was going on. So I had to get in on that conversation. Someone had to fill me in, and I'm still not 90% clear of what the issue is, right? But simply just because Ariel is the Black character now that people are so used to seeing as white. But thank you so much for that, Deidre.
You're welcome. You're so welcome.
Next slide, please, if no one else has anything. Okay, now we're going to talk about actually using social media for advocacy. Next slide. In order to use social media effectively for advocacy, you need to have a strategy. You want to identify the audience you would like to reach. So figure out who it is that you're speaking to, who it is that is most likely to be moved by your content. These are important questions to answer since your message and the way you tell it should differ based on the intended audience. You want to set your objectives. Is your goal narrow? Are you publicizing an event? Or is it broad? Are you building and engaging a community or coalition? Clarify the exact call to action that you want to elicit from your campaign. You want to define your message. What story are you telling? Be clear on what it is and what kind of values, problems, solutions, and actions that need to be involved, right? You want to choose the most appropriate platform. And what I mean by that, if I have a lot of words to say, then I go to Facebook. If I have a great picture I want to use, and that's it, I go to Instagram. If I have a link, then I'm going to Twitter, right? Because you need to know that Twitter, you're only within 280 characters. Instagram, you can also have a story, but a lot more often than not, people go to Instagram simply for the pictures. But if you really want to tell the story and get the most engagement out of the story, then you use Facebook. And lastly, you want to create or compile resources to share. And that's, if you really want your advocacy to go somewhere, then you need to give people the information that they need in order to carry your message on. Next slide, please. So in knowing all that, there are general principles for using social media. You want to be genuine. Determine the tone of your messaging. Let your personality show and use humor wherever possible, right? Try not to simply broadcast. Rather, when possible, speak as an individual to other individuals. It gives that sense of connectedness, right? You're not talking at people, you're having a dialogue with them. You want to stay focused. The people and organizations that follow you on social media have certain expectations about the type of content that you post and the way you engage with them. So if you stray too far from your objectives, then you will lose the trust and attention of your community. You want to be reliable. Share quality content from trusted sources and avoid amplifying erroneous messages from unreliable sources. So you want to, the last principle is to get social. Remember, above all else, social media is about conversation. Share and comment on other people's or organizations' posts to start new conversations and join in on the conversations that are occurring on your social media pages. Next slide. We also use social media with our friends, right? And in doing that, we're not so structured in the way that we talk. It's very relaxed. We're sharing like the entertaining parts of our lives. We're trying to be happy and jovial. And I'm always trying to be affirming to my friends who are on social media when I am able to get on and see like they're doing something that's celebratory, right? So how is it different when using social media for work? Next slide. Okay, so the thing is, you want to manage your online persona during times of stress, right? Because there will be difficult times, as we all know. But before I actually make a comment or before I actually make a post and I know that I'm upset, I'm feeling some type of way, what I do is I use HALT. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, right? Why am I so upset? What is really going on with me? Because what I put out there, sometimes I can't get back. I can't get it back, right? So is it realistic? Is my anger realistic, right? And I need to recognize when people are trying to troll me, because the more that we're on social media, just know that the trolls are out there. But even if I take all of that into account and I still decide to go in on somebody, what are the consequences in really flaming that person, right? Would I still have the desired effect that I want from my original post if I go off on a tangent because someone made a comment that I didn't agree with? But just know, before you even do all of that, and you do recognize that someone is trying to troll you, you can simply block them. You can block them. Sometimes they come back, and if it becomes too much for you, then just know that you can also report them. HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Just know that you can also report them to the platform administrator. Next slide, please. Here we have a visual representation of these trolls I was talking about. So basically just don't fall for the trap. When we are working within organizations, a lot of people are not going to agree with the work that we do. And so these trolls come out of nowhere, right? It's happened to me. It has happened to other friends and other colleagues that I know. But what we do know is that it's okay to say, no, I'm not going to engage in this. I recognize that this is a bait, right? And what are the trolls there for? They're there to make you mad, the internet mad. They want people to be as miserable as they are. But you have the option to simply not engage. And if it continues, again, don't forget, you can always report them to the platform administrator. Next slide, please. Knowing that trolls are out there, they are out there, and not even sometimes the trolls, but we could actually like get into it with someone that we really respect, right? On social media. That presents a conflict. It could present a conflict in our working relationship. So how do we start to resolve that conflict is the question that I want you to think about. Next slide. which should be a poll question. And here we have it. The poll question says, have you ever engaged in an argument on social media? Options: yes, all the time; yes, once or twice; no, never. And I'll give you a few seconds to actually get your answer in. Has everyone responded? Okay, and let's see what the answers are. One person said yes, all the time. 3 people said yes, once or twice, and 1 said no, never. I myself have gotten into an online argument. So it's not to say that it doesn't happen, and none of us are perfect. We are human, right? And so the thing is, like, what was the reasoning behind it? Was it simply because they differed in opinion from you, or they were just downright derogatory, right? So you have options. You do have options. Next slide, please. Now, I realize that this slide has all the words on it, right? But this is how I want you to know that these are 7 things you can do to maintain your cool and make it easier for you while you're on social media. And what will happen is that we're going to share the slides with you, but this one is one that you might want to print out and keep close to you, at your desk, in your home office, wherever you are. And what you don't want to do, what I do want you all to know is that it's okay to have a difference of opinion, but fighting online is not helpful and it's not productive, right? So before you actually get into a verbal argument with someone online, just don't assume you know what that person was saying or what their reasonings are. So we ask clarifying questions. What did you mean by that? Where did you get that information? How did you come to this conclusion, right? You want to practice calling people into the conversation versus calling them out. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide, right? But just know that you can respect your own personal boundaries. Sometimes you just simply don't have time for it. You don't. You recognize what it is and you don't have time for it, and that's okay. It doesn't make you look weak. It doesn't do any of that. It actually shows your strength and it shows your integrity, right? Now, what do I mean by reclaim your time? We can definitely pull a Maxine, right? And this is your time to be heard. What I mean by reclaiming your time is that you're seizing the power, right? You're refusing to let other people drive that process. You came up with the post and someone's coming on and they're trying to take it over, right? You can reclaim your time. It's being clear that you're not buying into someone trying to manipulate you. And again, as always, if it's too personal or threatening, report them to the platform administrators after you block them, because you still can block them. Next slide.
Just want to stop and see if anybody has any questions about the best practices before we move on.
Okay. And as I promised, we're talking about calling in versus calling out. So what is the whole purpose of calling out, right? Because it's so popular in our culture. It is. Thank you. So what is the purpose of calling out, right? You want to let the person know that they're actually being oppressive. And when you call people out, you want other people to know that that person is being oppressive. But what is the goal of it? It's actually aimed at getting the person to stop the behavior, but chances are it's going to be counterproductive because when you call someone out, they feel attacked. They feel as though they have to defend their reasoning, right? And there's no opportunity for an educational moment when you call someone out. Now, the behavior may stop, but there may not ever be an opportunity for you to work with that person. So on the flip side of that, we call people in. We call people in. Is when you call people in, it's very intentional and very strategic, right? It shows patience and compassion. You understand that this person may not even understand that what they said was hurtful or impactful. So after you go through the calling in process, it could also provide an opportunity for allyship, you know, having accomplice in the unlikeliest of places, right? But the point of calling in, it actually addresses the impact of an action or a word versus the intention behind it. And Barb, I think we had a question pertaining to the last slide.
Yeah, and do you want to just catch it at the end since we're into the calling out specifics now, or do you want to talk about it now?
Yeah, we'll catch it at the end. Just remind me.
I will do so.
Okay, next slide. Just know that calling in is something that is not always easy to do, but I have provided a model for you, right? You want to clearly identify that there is a problem. You want to let the person know that what they said or what they did was not okay, right? You also want to ask clarifying questions. What did you mean by that? Where did you get that information? You want to share the impact that it had on you. And again, that addresses the impact of those words or actions on a community versus the intent behind the words, right? A lot of people will defend their intent and never ever acknowledge the impact that their words had on people. And you want to discuss how to fix the problem and determine a preferred solution. When you said this, it made me feel this way. Here's another way that you could have said the same thing without such a hurtful impact, right? Still can get your message across, but you want to fix the problem first, and then you want to model the solution. So just go over it a couple of times. Next slide, please. Just be aware that, like I said in the beginning, we all have a communication style, and that style also comes with a tone. Next slide. Your communication style can be real or perceived. And here's a question for the audience. How do you communicate online? Thank you. So does it work positively or negatively for you? Are you effective in communicating your point? Question asked, is it more like a dictator or conversational? Is it your way or the highway, or you're open to having a dialogue? Because not to say that you're necessarily wrong, but someone could else help you see a different side of the same topic, right? So when expressing anger at issues, policies, or agencies, are you mindful of the impact versus the intent behind the words you used? Because what could happen is that it could result in literally missed opportunities. We in the HIV field, we go to conferences, they offer scholarships. Sometimes because of what you post on social media will determine whether or not you get a scholarship. Organizations will not want to work with you because they feel as though they're going to be called out. And it could result in missed education and opportunities to persuade because they already have a guard up. So just be mindful of your conversational style and tone. Next slide. And as we come to the close, I just want you all to remember that social media is fairly new. And there were times as advocates where we were perceived one way and opportunities can be lost when we don't know why, right? So honestly, none of us were given an instructional manual on how to effectively communicate and advocate on social media. So we're all learning as we go. We're all learning as we go. And depending on our impact or our impact of the words that we use versus the intent behind it, we don't want to miss those opportunities. It happened to me. People actually thought that I was mean. They would say that I was mean because of the content that I posted on social media. And it's not that I was mean, I was angry. And I didn't know how to express that anger without actually making other people feel some type of way. So I had to do a step back and realize who it was that Facebook was saying that I am, right? Because people were monitoring my social media. And the same could be very well true for you. Are there any questions?
While we are waiting to see if anyone has any questions, they can go ahead and type their questions in the Q&A box or can raise their hand and we'll go ahead and take them off of mute and they can go ahead and ask those questions themselves. But we did have one about the best practices, which
Yes.
was when you say you are reclaiming your time, what do you say?
When you say that you're reclaiming your time?
Yeah.
What do you say? Okay, so it's not, I'm not saying that you actually go on the post and you be like, I'm reclaiming my time, I'm done with this. What I'm saying is you have the option to actually not even engage in it when you see that it's going down that rabbit hole, right? Let's take, for example, the example from Maxine Waters. Wait, is that her name? Maxine? Yeah. So let's use that as an example, right? Here she is, this elderly Black woman in Congress, right? And she was making a point. She asked this gentleman, a white man, one of her colleagues, a question. And instead of him answering the question, he was beating around the bush trying to draw out her time, right? Because they have a certain amount of time to get the question asked, to get the question answered. And when she realized that she was never going to get a straight answer from him, she stopped him and reclaimed her time. So I'm going to move away from this because I'm not going to get the answer that I'm seeking, right? Or on social media, you can move away from it because you know that you're likely not to get on the same wavelength. And that's okay. It's okay for people to have opinions different than you. But what we don't want to do, again, as I stated, is we don't want to get onto online fights because that's all people will remember. They're not going to remember this great enlightening point that you made in your post. They're going to remember the fight, right? So that's what I mean by reclaiming your time on social media. The block button works. You don't have to deal with them ever again. Or if, like I said in the beginning, if it gets to be too much, you can actually report them because the trolls are real, you guys. They are out there. Any other questions? And I hope I answered that. All right, well, seeing none, if we'll go to the next slide. I want to say thank you all and provide you with my contact information. So again, I'm Tiami Luckett. You have my email, tiami@pwn-usa.org. And if you feel the need that you want to call me at my work number, 510-703-6100. What I did not put up there were my office hours, 9 a.m. Central to 5:30 p.m. Central. And again, I want to leave you all with NMAC's website page, PWN websites page, and the caucus website page. So before we end, we sure? No more questions?
Yep, I'm just checking to see if we've got any more questions. And it looks like we do not. So I want to just go ahead and thank everybody for joining us today. As we mentioned, these will be up on the PWN website, which the link is here. And so we will have those up in a day or two. And thank you all very much for joining us. And thank you, Tiami, for sharing some incredible wisdom around social media and advocacy.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you for all your technical assistance. Bye, everybody.